RNZ National, time for our fortnightly money segment with personal finance expert Mary Holm. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Jesse.
Quite a provocative topic from you today.
Yes, it came thinking about the price of housing and how lots of people are just saying they can't get into the housing market.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that, and I don't want this to come across as being critical of people saying that, but I hope it might be a bit encouraging, what
Yes.
I've got to say.
People can be a bit
Yeah.
sensitive on this topic. If they say, hey, I can't afford to buy a house, and people say, well,
Yes.
you should go out to brunch less.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Which
yes,
I've never heard you say.
No.
And there is,
no.
objectively, there is a problem with house prices in New Zealand. If you line us up income to house price ratio, we're way up there. That's no one's fault.
Absolutely.
In the buying market.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. New Zealand house price rises are still the fastest in the OECD since 1990, even though they've gone down recently. And they did go down in the global financial crisis around 2007, 8, 9. But most of the time they've risen, and we're the fastest growing of all the countries in the OECD since 1990. And house prices to incomes, as you say, go back into the 70s, 80s and that, and houses cost about 3 times the average household income. And we talked about this many times. Now it's about 9 times. It's gone down a bit lately, but not that much. And that's by far the best measure. It's houses compared with incomes.
Because that's affordability, really, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. But having said that, I just got thinking about, it started with me thinking about the houses I and my friends grew up in, and that got me thinking along the lines of the quality of houses and how they changed since then. So I looked at the house size for a start, and in 1974, the average house size in New Zealand was 120 square metres. And by 2010, it had risen from 120 to 200, which is a huge increase.
Yeah.
A huge increase. By 2019, it had dropped back down, actually. Part of that gain had gone back down to 158, which is interesting. And surprisingly, when I read that, I thought, that'll be because of more townhouses.
I was going to say apartments, yeah.
And apartments, yes. Because we're talking homes, not just free standalone houses.
Yeah.
But apparently the size of standalone houses, the average size, has gone down a bit since 2010 as well. I'm guessing, there are some sort of big subdivisions that have got quite little houses
The
in
sizes
them.
of sections have gone down, haven't they?
Way down. Yes, that's right. That's a really good point. When they've subdivided in the suburbs and you can't fit a big house in back behind another house often. But nonetheless, we're still at about 158 square metres compared with 120 in the 70s.
Yeah.
So we're still quite a lot bigger.
About a third bigger.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's still a lot bigger. And then I had a look at international comparisons. New houses in New Zealand are still quite a lot smaller than in Australia and America, but we're twice the size of the UK, Europe and Japan.
Really?
So, yeah, isn't that interesting? For all sorts of reasons. You remember London's full of these crammed together houses and it just can't fit all the people in. Yeah. But anyway, the fact remains that our houses are pretty big. And meanwhile, family size has gone down over that period. For one thing, people are just having fewer children, And in fact, when I'm doing seminars, I sometimes say to people, think of the number of siblings in your family, you and your siblings.
Yeah.
In my case, it's 4. Think of the number of children you've had. In my case, it's 1. And I say to the audience, now, who has had more children than they were siblings?
Yeah.
And you get about 2 out of 100. The vast majority of family sizes have fallen quite a lot. Jesse, you're not amongst us, are you? You got 4 kids, right?
It's a bit complicated with my siblings. I've got 2 half siblings, so 4. Yeah, so 4 really, and my wife's had one of 4
Yes.
And then we've had 4.
Oh, so you've sort of kept equal.
Yeah.
Yes. Having 4 these days is unusual.
It is,
I
yeah.
must say. Yes,
People look at you like you're trying to start some sort of cult.
Yes, indeed. Yes. But one of the, not only are people having fewer children, but because the population's ageing, people are living longer, and those households tend to be 1 or 2 people, the older families. And so we've got fewer and fewer people in the houses, in the homes, than we had before. Another just interesting statistic was that in 1886 there were more than 5 people per house back then, and it's gone down to 2.7, so it's halved, more than halved.
You say 1886?
Yes, way back then. And yeah, when you think about the big families people had back then.
And so it would have been very normal for children to share a room, for example.
Absolutely, yes, certainly in the 1880s. House quality, meanwhile, has gone up in a lot of good ways, like insulation was compulsory in new homes from the late 70s. Yeah, and so these days, and the government's requiring rental properties to be insulated, etc. That, before the 70s, a lot of houses weren't. And double glazings come in and become compulsory in new houses now. And also earthquake strengthening is happening now. So the quality of houses has gone up. And so that's part of what might be happening with the increased prices, that you're getting a better quality home.
Ah, yes.
But at the same time, when you look at the rooms in houses now, I start wondering how much it's all necessary. A lot of houses have more than 1 bathroom. That's pretty common now, and more than 1 toilet. Whereas, like the household I grew up in...
No way you would have more than 1 toilet.
No, and how did we all get through showers in the morning? That puzzles me.
Did everyone used to shower each morning, or is that a sort of a modern thing as well?
I must ask my siblings because I can't remember.
Yeah.
But you wonder how that all... But, everybody managed. These days, new houses often have a double garage attached to the house, and that wasn't standard before. 3 or 4 bedrooms is common now, and it wasn't so common back then. And more than 1 living room. New houses often have a sort of posher room, and then a rumpus room or a children's playroom or something like that. And then you look back at the early settlers, where it's astonishing sometimes when you see those old houses that had a family of 12 in them or something like that. They've got 1 or 2 rooms. And, they must have slept, 4 kids in a bed. And so when you look back in history, it's really interesting. But when I was a kid, typically there'd be 1 room for the girls and 1 room for the boys, and so I can remember houses where there were like 2 rooms for 5 boys, or 1 room. I think in one case there were 4 girls in 1 room. They just you put bunks in or just squeeze another bed, and they had to be quite big rooms. But the concept of a child each having their own room and their own space just wasn't there. And, for good and bad, I think it's neat for a kid to have their own room and put their own pictures on the wall and be messy or tidy or whatever they want to be. But it's just, is it necessary? If people are saying, I just simply can't afford a house, I'm saying, well, perhaps you can afford a more modest house. Yeah, as a first house.
You're talking about expectations, really, aren't you?
Yeah, totally.
What do you expect from a house?
Yeah. And, these days it'll be insulated and double glazed and all of that, and that's great. And I'm not suggesting we go back on those sort of changes. But, people could manage with fewer bedrooms or and only 1 bathroom and et cetera, which leads us, of course, to tiny homes, which are really interesting again, aren't they? The way they fit. I get fascinated by the way they use every cubic centimetre in them.
Yeah.
You know, up underneath the seat there'll be storage space and bookcases inside.
Because we live in an
And,
older home. Our home's about 100 years old, and those massive high walls.
Oh, yes.
All the space that you do nothing with, basically.
Yeah, and have to heat.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, true.
Yes. So, I mean, tiny homes, I was just doing a little bit of online research, and there's a really neat website called Money Hub. That's got all sorts of information about all sorts of
Is that the price comparison sites?
They do some. It's not specifically that.
Yeah.
They look at all sorts of topics on there. And they had a good page on tiny homes,
Great.
including pointing out the traps for young players, and there are quite a few. But nonetheless, I think that tiny homes are something for people to consider if they're saying, I just can't afford a house and I'm priced right out of the housing market. Or perhaps just a more modest, ordinary home that's got only one bathroom and only, 2 bedrooms for the kids. And
We're used to being so comfortable, aren't we, in 2023?
Yes, we are.
I'm not speaking for everyone here. I'm just talking about, the life I know and my friends, but never really that hungry. We've all got plenty of room to stretch out.
Yes.
If we don't have the backyard and the deck, then we feel like, just got to get that seen too.
Yes.
We haven't got a second living area. How are we going to manage?
Or like the backyard thing's interesting because people are now saying they quite like not having much garden to take care of.
Yeah.
And it's
got flat screen, massive TVs, and I guess the point I'm making is we've got used to this pretty comfortable life, and maybe there is another way, and maybe if you'd grown up as we did with 2 kids in one bedroom or 3 kids in one bedroom, it would seem more normal.
It would, yes, and it's just for a first home. I'm not saying people have to put up with low standards forever, but for a first home, could be one way to do it.
The other advantage is you get onto that ladder, eh?
Yes, it's such a cliche, the housing ladder, isn't it? But it's true. You're quite right. Yes, get into the market.
Okay. So, the message is if you feel like house prices are still too expensive, there may be an option to change what you're looking for.
Yes, lower your expectations. And just get into a first home that's, I had some friends when I was young who they bought this land with just a hut on it that the road builders had used, and the council wouldn't certify it as being okay to live in. And they said, well, what do we have to do to... It had dirt floor in one of the rooms, and what do we have to do to get it certified? And they had to do a whole lot of little things that they did themselves and lived in it, you know. Yeah.
And I should point out too that you're not saying that means that everything is right with the system and that there's not a problem with the fact that a young family can't get a house that's
absolutely
big enough for them.
Yeah.
You're saying given the situation we're in.
Yes, here's just perhaps another approach to because it is nice for families to get into their own home.
Yeah, you can't begrudge someone wanting to have one room for each of the children.
No, indeed. No.
Particularly when everyone else they know has one. Thank you, Mary.
Yes,
great
pleasure,
topic.
Jesse.
And as I say, a provocative topic. Interested in your thoughts. 2101 is the text number, or Jesse at rnz.co.nz.